we have a guest speaker, Rabbi Dennis Ross, who is has done a lot of writing about the philosopher Martin Buber, and he's going to be talking about his book, which is A Year with Martin Buber, finding something each week from relating to the Torah portion of that week from Martin Buber's philosophy, and so he's going to share that with us. It's also what's referred to as Shabbat Shemot, which is the Sabbath for the first section of the book of Exodus, but in Hebrew it means the Sabbath of names, and so we're
calling tonight's meeting of the Franklin Conservation Commission to order. As with our prior meeting, we're starting at 6 o'clock. That's in order to have a session on our open space and recreation plan. So from 6 to 7 o'clock, in line with our normal bi-weekly meetings, we will be devoting an hour to talking through the plan. And the theme for tonight is municipal recreation facilities and parks, including ADA compliance and accessibility. Just before we start, due to concerns regarding COVID-19 and various other seasonal ailments, we're continuing to operate in a hybrid setting. So folks are welcome to come in to town chambers to participate via Zoom. If you are participating via Zoom, we'd ask you to go to the Zoom application and to dial in the code, which is 892-7789-6911. Or you can dial the phone number 929-205-6099. And again, the meeting number is 892-7789-6911. And again, just as a general announcement for the open space plan, we're here to receive these Thursday evening sessions are to hear feedback from some of our stakeholder groups. If you do have any comments, you're welcome to come and ask questions. You're also welcome to submit those comments online, and you can find that on our website, which is franklinma.gov/conservation. With that, Brika, can you give us a quick overview of what we're hoping to talk through tonight?
Sure. So back again is Ryan Jetty. He's on Zoom as the fearless leader for all things recreation in Franklin. And we also have Building Commissioner Gus Brown with us, who spearheads the ADA compliance.
Great. Well, Gus, thanks for being here. Ryan, thanks
pleasure.
for being with us on Zoom. So how do you want, what makes the most sense? And we want this to kind of be your show to give us a sense of
Sure.
what the needs are, what the current lay of the land is, and then we'll I'm sure have some questions as well.
Ryan and I have worked together on this at some point. I think it was 2017, Ryan, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the right date? Yes. And I know we were in pretty good shape at that time. And Ryan's got a little bit more detail into this than I do. But for the most part, a meeting we had maybe 2 months ago involved, here in the town hall, involved the fact that we were in great shape with a lot of our facilities. We will be doing a walkthrough coming up here pretty quickly. But I'm going to turn it over to Ryan because I think he's got a little bit more insight into this. Not to put you in the hot seat, Ryan, but
okay, thanks, Gus. I appreciate it. Yeah, so thank you, everybody, for letting me speak a little bit about the facilities. Just give you a quick overview of how I'd like to do it is give you a little introduction to our facilities in town. I'll run through the entire inventory of all of our public facilities. We do have some private facilities too in town. I'll just touch base on them. Obviously, we don't own those, so I'm not going to go into a lot of depth about what is entailed there. And then Gus and I can kind of go through the ADA. We did a self-evaluation of all of our parks and playgrounds in town, and then we also prepared a transition plan back in 2016. And then over that period of time, since 2016, we've been working with our Public Works department to make improvements at those facilities so that they're up to the codes with handicap accessibility. All of our playgrounds are. We put a lot of walkways in. grab bars in some of the bathrooms, mirrors that, you know, flex so that people in wheelchairs could access them as well. So yeah, we did an extensive self-evaluation and transition. So I'll go through that as well. But just to give you a quick overview, the rec department, we do all of the permitting in town. And please, I don't want to be too wordy here. So as I'm going, if anybody has questions, feel free to just chime in or shout out anything. But we do all of the permitting. We get a ton of permits every year from all of the youth sports organizations. We work very closely with the athletic director at the Franklin High School to make sure that we're booking the facilities with the high school programs first, and then we kind of funnel all the youth programs in there as well. And then we get a lot of independent groups that want to use Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, different groups that want to do birthday parties and stuff like that. So we do all that permitting here at the Recreation Department. We work real closely with our DPW to ensure all the maintenance, proper maintenance is kept up with all the playgrounds in standards of the ASTM and the Consumer Product Safety Commission. We also schedule all the fields for all the 5,000 kids in youth sports, and as I mentioned, all the Franklin High School programs as well. Just to give you some of the newer projects, we just completed a new project at Beaver Pond. We did a playground in 2021 that was named after the Vendetti family. It was a traditional 5 to 12 age group playground. And then we just completed the fitness course, what they call an obstacle course that's in turf in November of this year, 2022. We did the King Street Memorial Park playground, did some improvements there. We built some pickleball courts, and we did a basketball court. We made some improvements to the baseball field. That was done in 2019. And then going back to 2017, we did the Delcart playground, the redo of the Delcart playground. A lot of you probably remember in 2015, we did the stone, kind of the stone structure, and that was crumbling on us. And we rebuilt it into a traditional playground in 2017. Currently planning a new playground in the spring of 2023 over at Mason Street Tot Lot. We're also working on plans for improvements to the Fletcher Field playground, which that'll be done in 2023 as well. And we're working on a master plan right now for the King Street Memorial Park for a new building, some field lighting on the soccer field, additional pickleball courts, and some improvements at the playground. So those are some exciting things we have coming up. Let me go on to the next page here, my slide sheet. So just to go through the inventory, it's very extensive, so I'm going to move through it rather quickly. And if anybody has questions, you can chime in. The King Street Memorial Park is at 740 King Street. It's right at the corner of King and Forest. There's roughly 25.8 acres at that parcel. We have there's two baseball fields. One is like a T-ball field for like 7-year-old children. The other one is a 11 and 12-year-old Little League field. We have two full-size soccer fields, basketball court, pickleball courts. We have a covered pavilion, 2 bocce courts, bike racks, picnic tables, and a playground area. We also have our community garden there, which is really great. There's 56 garden beds. Fletcher Field is at 45 Peck Street. It's also on the Wachusett Street side. We have a parking lot over there. There's 13 acres at Fletcher Field. We have 3 small T-ball fields, 2 small Little League fields, 1 baseball field, 2 basketball courts, and a street hockey rink. We have a restroom facility, batting cages, concession stand, bike racks, and 2 playgrounds. At the Dacey Community Park, it's at 660 Lincoln Street or 700 Lincoln Street. There's 95 acres to Dacey Community Field. There's playground equipment there for 2 to 12-year-olds. We have a swing set, 2 small baseball fields, batting cage, 1 large soccer field, walking trails, bike racks, picnic tables, disc golf course, and a dog park. We also have as I mentioned, the Mason Street Tot Lot. Right now, we're renovating that, so there's nothing there now, but in the spring, we'll have a handicap accessible playground for 2 to 5-year-olds, as well as 5 to 12-year-olds with some swing sets and picnic tables. The sculpture park is at 353 Panther Way. That's 3.5 acres, and there's some sculptures there that were done by students at Wheaton College, and there's some walking paths as well. The town common is at 200 Main Street. There's 4 acres there. There's an ADA compliant bandstand with memorials and benches and a stage that's set up in the summertime where we conduct our concerts on the common. Chilson Beach at 420 Beaver Street is 26 acres. We have a town beach there, picnic tables, a boat launch area, swimming dock, the Vendetti Playground, which is a tot lot for 2 to 5-year-olds, and there's some 5 to 12-year-old play equipment as well. There's a swing set, facility for concessions, restrooms. There is a lacrosse rebound wall that was just recently installed, small grass multi-use field, which will be seeded in the spring. And then there's an artificial turf obstacle fitness course as well. We also have at that location a 2-acre artificial turf that's lined for soccer, football, and lacrosse with lighting. And there's bleachers and a scoreboard. At Pisani Field on Peck Street, it's 38 Peck Street. There's 3.7 acres there. There's 2 small softball fields with lights, restroom facilities, and a concession stand, and 2 batting cages. The Veterans Memorial Rink is a DCR, it's owned by DCR, and that's at 910 Panther Way. It's not owned by the town, but there's 6.5 acres there. It's an indoor ice skating and hockey rink. The Brick School, everybody knows where that is. It's 2 Lincoln Street, 0.2 acres. There was some old playground equipment that's been removed, and they're doing some work there. Mike D'Angelo Facilities is doing some work to renovate that. The Parmenter School's at 235 Washington Street. There's 20 acres there. We have 1 small baseball field, some walking trails in the back, and there's an ADA compliant playground, gymnasium indoors, and there's also an outdoor basketball court. Davis Thayer School's at 137 West Central Street. There's 3.5 acres there, a small baseball field, an ADA compliant playground, gymnasium indoors, outdoor basketball court, and some basketball hoops as well. JFK Elementary School at 551 Pond Street, there's 15 acres there, large playing field, ADA compliant playground, indoor gymnasium, outdoor basketball courts. Oak Street Elementary at 218 Oak Street, there's 5 acres there, it's an ADA compliant playground, indoor gymnasium with basketball courts. Horace Mann School, same location at 224 Oak Street, 30 acres there, soccer fields, gymnasium, outdoor basketball hoops. The Delcart Recreation Area is at 459 Pleasant Street. There's 106 acres. There's a town reservoir there, ADA compliant playground, walking trails, canoe and kayak launch. There's a boardwalk with a dock and some fishing. Franklin High School at 218 Oak, there's 73 acres there. Everybody knows there's 2 softball fields, 2 baseball fields, indoor gymnasium. We have 2 multi-use turf fields with lights. Tri-County Regional Vocational Technical High School at 147 Oak, 60 acres. There's a baseball field there, football field, a track, soccer field with lights, softball field, and an indoor gymnasium. Meadowlark Lane Complex, it's at 39 Meadowlark Lane. There's 2.5 acres, small baseball field, soccer field, concession facility, and a small tot swing area. Remington Jefferson Schools at 628 Oak Street, 60 acres, softball fields, football fields, 2 soccer fields, 50-70 size baseball field, outdoor basketball court, indoor basketball court, 2 ADA compliant playgrounds, and an indoor gymnasium. Keller Sullivan Schools at 500 Lincoln Street, 14 acres, soccer field / lacrosse field. There are softball field there, ADA compliant playground, and indoor gymnasium. And then we have finally the Riverbend Conservation Area is at 900 Lincoln Street. There's 14.5 acres, all walking trails and a parking lot with a kiosk. I'll just run through real quickly our private recreation sites. We have Harborwood Association Playground. Anyone that doesn't know where that is, it's kind of off of Parliament. I think it's called Northgate and Southgate, between there. It's at 21 Parliament Drive, and there's 2 acres. It's an old abandoned basketball court, playground area, and some ball fields. It's maintained by the association. Franklin Country Club is at 672 East Central, 119-acre golf course, pool, clubhouse. Camp Hyaston, which is 722 Summer Street, 98 acres. It's an Armenian family campground with cabins, tents, boat launch, basketball court, and swimming. Franklin Rod and Gun Club's at 51 Florence. It's 2.4 acres of beach area, picnic area, and fishing. The YMCA at 45 Forge Hill Road, 7.8, indoor pool, indoor basketball court, tennis courts, playground, program space, and a facility for working out, and a skateboard facility. Planet Fitness is now at one, I'm not sure what it's called now. I believe it's still called Planet Fitness, but it's 166 Grove Street, 6.5 acres, weight room, aerobic room, basketball courts, karate center upstairs. And then there's also, geez, I don't even know what it's called now. It used to be Team Fitness at Franklin Village. It's a 0.4 acre weight room, aerobic room, CrossFit studio, cardio center. I think it's called NRG Lab now, actually. And there's Adirondack Club, 800 Chestnut Street, is 11.3 acres. It's a weight room, daycare facility, 3 indoor, outdoor pools, ADA compliant playground, lounge, tennis courts. And finally, Dean College Fields at Longley, 169 Maple Street, 76 acres, football field, soccer field, baseball, softball, and concessions. So those are all the public facilities. Any questions so far? No, that's a lot.
So that's all?
So, with all the facilities we already have, are we meeting the town's needs? How much more do we need, given the planning growth of the town over the next 10 years or so?
Yeah, I said this 2 weeks ago at the last meeting, but I feel that we are meeting the needs. I mean, I have a list of activities too that's in this packet. I think Bree can put that up online too, the packet that I presented to the town council a few months back. It has a whole list of the activities that are currently available in town, and it's quite lengthy. And I feel like we are meeting the needs with our facilities. What I said 2 weeks ago was that we have the number of facilities. It's just maintaining and keeping up to date with all of the, all of the parks and playgrounds to make sure if something's broken, we're fixing it. If something's out of compliance, we're upgrading it. So I think that's where we're at right now, is that we're trying to look around town at our existing facilities and make those improvements to make them better.
And Ryan, it sounds like for current capital projects, it's mainly around the King Street, Memorial, Fletcher, and Nason Street. Are those any others besides those three?
So in this order, I would say Nason Street tot lot will be the first one you'll see done. Fletcher Field Playground will be the second one. And that's just the front structure. In the rear of the playground there, it's fairly new. It was done in 2016. We got a state grant and we built a baseball themed playground in the back. The playground structure in the front, that's the one that we're gonna redo. We just got a $50,000 grant from the state to do that. And I'm gonna be going to the Community Preservation Committee in about a month's time to ask for an additional $150,000. We want to put in that rubberized poured-in-place surface and a new playground in front. After that, we're looking at doing King Street Memorial Park. As I said before, we're working on a master plan to do a new building, splash pad, lights, parking, some additional playground equipment, and more pickleball courts. And then after that, we'll be looking to do the Gacy Field Playground over. That one is aging. That was built back in 2007. At Horace Mann, behind the school, there is an old abandoned field. When we did the whole high school project in the turf fields at the high school, we were using that area as our staging area to put all the loom and stockpile all of our materials. And when that project was done at the high school, they stripped a lot of that loom out and kind of left it. So that field really needs to be done over. And when we host large track meets at Franklin, that's the area that they use to do the discus and the shot put and the javelin. And so we'd like to fix that up and make it, better for those field events. So that's what we'll be doing back there. Then at Beaver Pond, we're looking to replace the scoreboard and install a press box so that the high school students, not sure if anybody knows about Huddle, but it's a real big recruiting tool for a lot of our high school athletes. And it allows you to do videotaping the games, and they can live stream them to coaches and stuff like that. So we work with Franklin TV to install Huddle in that press box and upgrade that facility. Then Remington Jefferson basketball courts are gonna need to be done soon. Franklin High School softball field, there's no restrooms up there right now, so we're using portable toilets. It gets a little gross, you know what I mean? So they're gonna be, we'll be looking to install restroom facilities there, as well as Gacy Community Field. We don't have restrooms there, so we're using portable toilets there. And as we get more and more people using the dog park, the disc golf course, on all the fields, we really should have a small restroom facility there. Some other projects I'm looking at down the line, the stadium field at the high school. You notice on the visitor side, those bleachers are starting to fall apart. And I know Mike D'Angelo is already working to secure funding to do that, so we'll need to do that over. The front turf at Franklin High School will eventually need to be resurfaced. And then Franklin High School tennis courts, we're starting to see some stress cracks in the asphalt, and we'd be looking to do post-tension concrete to redo those tennis courts. That's kind of a long-term view of some of the recreation capital projects.
Any questions?
So, Brian, I just know from some of the survey answers that we've received back so far from some of the town members that one of the things that came up was a request for additional tennis courts. Looking at the fact that you're putting in pickleball courts, I've seen tennis and pickleball courts together. Would that be somewhere where we could look at that for King Street as a possible solution? Or do you not foresee us necessarily needing that within town?
I'm not sure where you heard that concern that we need tennis courts. I mean, I have seen the courts full. I'm not denying that, but I have also seen them empty many times. So if there is a need, I would hope that people, when they're filling out their open space and recreation surveys, that they would include that, because I have not heard the need for more tennis courts yet. But if we did, I don't think King Street Park would be the location for it. It's
Okay.
not, we don't have enough space there. The little space that we do have, which is, if you know the area, it's kind of behind the community garden, and it's between the community garden and the Little League baseball field.
Yep.
There's a small grass space in there, and that's what we're looking to put the 4 additional pickleball courts. It's not etched in stone yet. We had one citizen engagement session where we got all the residents and the neighbors to come out and give us their feedback, and we did hear of one complaint about pickleball in that location, but that would be my choice, only because we already have 2 courts there. And pickleball is really, it's like a community event. You get a lot of people that want to, play each other in that one location. So that would be ideal. But yeah, getting back to your question about tennis courts, if there was a need, we could possibly look at, again, I don't know if this is even viable, but at Franklin High School, next to, behind the tennis courts, I'm not sure if that's conservation. You guys would have a say in that, obviously, but I'd love to see if that was doable to use that location.
Can I do another one?
Yeah, please, go for it.
So thrilled to hear that we are looking at, as well with you guys, with some of the ADA compliance at some of the playgrounds, especially the new playgrounds coming in, and looking at what we're qualifying as ADA compliant versus actually really accessible. What sort of plans do we have in place for accessibility and inclusion within the playgrounds going in? So for example, 2 weeks ago, Ryan and I quickly chatted about Daisy is technically an ADA compliant playground, but when I speak to my friends with small children who are in wheelchairs and with walkers, with the footing in that playground, they really can't get around, so they still can't use that playground even though it's technically ADA accessible, or ADA compliant, I guess. So what sort of plans are we looking at to really be a bit more inclusive in our playgrounds?
So I'll start off, Megan, with what expertise I have with what the AAB needs for a playground in Massachusetts, which is the Architectural Access Board, who kind of governs our handicapped accessibility. And they have specific, I'm going to say rules, maybe that's not the right word, as to how you put in a brand new playground. So if some of these are older facilities, sometimes the topography may not allow us to put in everything that we need to put in. There was some talk back and forth years ago about whether mulch would allow a wheelchair to traverse over it. And as you well know, it's very difficult to get, if you're using the wheelchair on your own,
Yeah.
it's very difficult unless someone's helping you along. I think what Ryan's goal is and what he's tried to do over the years is do the best he could with some of those facilities. And I hope this is answering your question, but the newer ones, if we put in a new facility, and Ryan backed me up on this, it should be 100% accessible to the extent of what a playground requires. I don't have the AAB book in front of me right now, but that's our goal and that's our hope.
Awesome.
Will we always hit the mark? Will we always capture everything that we need to? Sometimes the topography makes it difficult to do that. Ryan's done a fantastic job with what facilities we have now, but in the future moving forward, we want to try to get where we need to be. And specifically, you could help me out by giving me specific incidences that, maybe not the incidences, but locations where it might be a challenge too.
Yeah.
And we'll look into it. Maybe, you know, a grant for pavement, maybe. You try not to put asphalt, and Ryan may back me up on this too, you try not to put asphalt in at a playground, but then again, in
To at
some.
least get the access to it, yeah.
Yeah,
In
but,
some cases,
right.
it's
I mean,
required,
once
yeah.
you get there, I don't wanna say it's an unfriendly atmosphere to have the asphalt there, but if someone's in a wheelchair, you wanna give them every opportunity to use the facility, and if that involves putting asphalt down, we'll look into that as well.
Okay.
Well,
So-
and I think too, just to echo that, I mean, from kind of a design and architectural standpoint, like, playgrounds have come a long, long way, even in the past few years, and I think, I mean, Choate is one example in Midway that comes to mind where, you know, the surfacing that they use is like, it seems like the type of material that, it's a combination of asphalt, but also just the kind of, and I don't know.
Rubberized
Yeah,
surface,
rubberized
yeah.
surface that, but it, you know, things are spaced out a little bit more, you know, room for, you know, wheelchairs, strollers even, you know, to get through. But I think maybe looking at some examples of places that have gone in recently, and I wonder too, do you know if there are any state grants or any other sources of funding that are available to make, you know, or to kind of upgrade accessibility functions?
I think that's the goal of this, that we're trying to get to that point, Patrick, where we do look into those type of things. I'd be all for going to look at it and see what they have there. The AAB doesn't know everything, although they're pretty good. They get back to me with any questions I have, but you can email me, let me know, or we can take a trip over to Medway. Ryan, do we have anything like that here in Franklin? That rubberized
So-
asphalt for accessibility?
It's called poured in place, yeah, it's called poured in place rubber, and, any playground that we do in the future is gonna be poured in place. I mean, we do have one at Remington that we've recently done. So all the new playgrounds that you see, like Mike or I do at a school or in a town field, are gonna be poured in place. You know, the mulch, the law, the new law or the new acceptance is that, you know, mulch is not good and nobody wants to do mulch anymore. It served its purpose when we built these playgrounds 10 or 12, 20 years ago, but now, moving forward, anything that goes in is not gonna have mulch, so. The new thing that they're doing is they're putting these rubberized mats down so that you have accessibility to the transfer deck, which is, whenever you look at a playground, you'll always see this low, transfer deck, and there'll be a couple steps that'll go up and there'll be a handrail there. And that's really where, the access point for anybody that has mobility issues, getting onto a playground will access. And usually what they'll do is, if they're being real cheap, they'll roll down this rubber mat, at least to get the wheelchair to that area. And then they keep the rest mulch. But we can certainly look at that if there was a need to do that at existing playgrounds and it was gonna be too long until we could upgrade it. But I mean, I see Daisy, Fletcher, and Mason Street within the next 5 years getting completely done over with poured in place rubber. So
That's great.
that's kind of where I'd like to see the town head, is that anything new that goes in is gonna have that unitary surface down, so that people with mobility issues will be able to traverse the whole playground.
Sure, please, yeah.
Hi, my name is Emily Martins. I'm a resident in Franklin. I have 2 small children. I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about fencing, the importance of that for, I mean, Nason was my favorite because I knew it was a small contained space. So obviously I see the fencing still up, but is fencing considered for Fletcher moving forward? How can we incorporate that for young kids, for kids with behavioral concerns, with developmental disabilities that maybe can't understand the importance of parking lots, cars, et cetera? So just putting a plug in for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak about it. I mean, fencing at Nason Street is a definite. You've got that busy road right there, and the playground is for really young children, so that's a no-brainer. At Fletcher Field, we do have a guardrail there. It's not the same as a fence. The problem with fencing is it's extremely expensive. The new commercial fence that we've been installing, I mean, the fence that Fletcher Field playground in just that little tiny area is probably going to be $30,000. So it's something that a lot of times takes away from the value that you're putting into your playground. And I'm not trying to minimize the value of having a fence around a playground, but when you have a park like that where it's actually bordering a playground and you have a guardrail system, the belief is that it's going to take a kid a lot to kind of get out into that parking lot if their parents are with them. But I'm not ruling it out that we wouldn't do a fence, but I'm just trying to give you the reasons why we don't put fencing at that type of location. Even like Daisy Field, we put fencing around that because there's a hill there. It's a huge playground, and you can't really be with that child at all times to make sure that they're not going to run up that hill and into the playground. Fletcher's a little bit different, where you kind of got a buffer there with that guardrail. So that was kind of the reasoning, but. Yeah, again, we can probably talk to DPW to see if they'd be interested in helping us with the funding on that. But right now, there isn't a plan to fence Fletcher Field playground in.
So I will say, in addition to Emily's comment, is that part of our parent support group, we do make decisions on going to playgrounds as to whether or not there's a fence around it, because it is a safety concern, especially for parents that have children with developmental delays, et cetera, to be able to have a safe place for them to play without the extra stress of being out and about. So I appreciate that point. Thank you, Emily.
Yeah, and we do consider it. I mean, obviously, any location that we see poses a risk, we're going to put a fence. I mean, Delcart, we put a fence over there, and the Daisy one, we have a fence, and Nason Street, we have a fence. So we will do it on locations that we think pose a risk.
Right, I would just echo, I mean, for Fletcher, we're there all spring with baseball and t-ball, and my kids haven't figured out yet that they need to look up and look for cars that are coming and going in the parking lot. So I think, even something like that where, kids just aren't paying attention and making sure that we're designing for kids primarily and thinking from a 2 or 3 foot high person as opposed to adults and what we're used to seeing. So I appreciate that comment as well.
Yeah, I think just looking at the Fletcher Field layout, and again, this would just be my opinion. If we were going to fence it, it wouldn't be fencing the playground in. It would be putting a fence with a gate along the parking lot. Because right now you've got a fence over where the dumpster is located. So from that corner of where the DPW building is, straight all the way down to the baseball field concession area. That would be my suggestion, is to put a long fence along that guardrail and put a gate in there at the entrance where they go out into the parking lot at both locations. And I think that would solve it.
Yep. I like that solution.
Question on Zoom. Allie.
Allie, we see you with your hand raised. Feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Hi everyone, I'm Allie. I'm a Franklin resident. I actually have a couple of points to consider. Would it be okay to sort of rattle them off?
Sure. Yeah, I think we have time for that. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I, not only as a resident in general, but am someone who has disability myself. So there are times that I use a wheelchair or some sort of mobility device at these locations. And I always choose where I'm able to go in town according to the accessibility. So like I like to go to the farmer's market because there's paved pathways for that, which is awesome. However, so paved pathways being one thing, there are a few parks that the paved pathways don't go all the way to the entrance or to a seating area. For example, at the Pisani Fields, there's the parking lot, but then it's all grass, and I'm unable to walk on grass or use a wheelchair. So I can't get to the bleachers or anywhere else on that field. So one point to consider in these sort of plans would be how far a paved pathway goes. Like, can somebody get to each part of the park with a paved pathway? Because if not, then it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be accessible. Number two would be how accessible the entrances themselves are. So, for example, at Delcart, there's the playground up top, which is great, but I can't get to the beautiful trail that goes around the pond because there's that hill, and it's impossible in a wheelchair. Even I tried having someone else assist me with that, and they wouldn't be able to get me back up. I'd be sleeping down there. So I'm unable to use that facility, unfortunately. So consideration for how accessible entrances to each location are. You touched on bathrooms, which is great. There was one, the sculpture park. I know that's another place that it doesn't have a bathroom right there. There is one at the police station. But I love the sculpture park because it's paved. But again, there's no bathroom there. So that could be a place to consider as well for a facility. Two more, I promise, and then I'm done. Along with the playground surface conversation that has taken place, again, firsthand as someone who I'm unable to walk on uneven surfaces, so grass, mulch, things like that, or use a wheelchair on those. Anything, the way I understand now with ADA compliance, like we were saying, basically if you could pick up something making up the surface, it's not compliant. So like if you can pick up the mulch, it's loose, it's really not compliant. If you can pick up even stone dust, I'm thinking more, not playground, but paths. Stone dust is not accessible. It's like trying to just use wheels on rocks, which is very challenging. So the consideration for the rubberized surfaces definitely would be amazing. And lastly is awareness for seated areas. So if there's maybe a current facility or a new facility that ends up having like a longer path somewhere, maybe having some seating, some benches, like the town common. Love how many benches are there along the path. That's another great opportunity that we can do to support those with disability. So those are my few points, and I appreciate taking them into consideration. And my last, like, I guess, kind of fun in a way thing could be actually encouraging anyone who'd be willing to, on the committee or elsewise, borrow a wheelchair or a walker from the senior center and go have some fun. See how it would feel to try to access the current facilities that we have if you were in those using those mobility devices. I think it can be pretty eye-opening for kind of a firsthand experience. So thank you so much for hearing me, and I'm happy to talk anytime about disability perspective. Thank you.
Ally, thanks very much for sharing those comments. Gus, would you like to give some feedback on that?
I would. Hi, Ally. How are you tonight?
Great. Thank you so much.
Good. Nice to see you again. You bring up
Yeah.
some great points. I know Ryan and I talked about visiting facilities in the near future, and also having the disability chairwoman go with us, Mary O'Neill. So I think if you could maybe write some of these things down, I know Tyler's taking the minutes,
We
and
have them, Gus.
it would be nice to have,
We have them all.
you have them all. It'd
Yeah,
be nice to
Alex
have
will
any
have them.
feedback you could give us, so when we do make that trip, we address some of the concerns you brought up tonight.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, I did send it, and I just read off of the notes that I
Okay.
sent in. So, yep, thank you.
Great.
Is it okay if I address a few things?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. Hi, Ally. Thank you for those suggestions. I wrote them all down, and I appreciate that. I just want to point out, back in 2016, when we did the self-evaluation and transition plan for the ADA, for the open space and recreation part, we did bring Don Netto at that time. Well, Don Netto was the chairman of the Disability Commission. We did bring him with us on that trip, the original one. And then when we went back, we did bring, I think is it David Ferrillo? Is that his name, Gus? Remember him?
Michael.
Michael Ferrillo. Yeah, so Michael was also on the commissions for persons with disability, and he was involved in that process as well. So we did, in fact, do that. And you brought up a good point about Pisani Field, because the parking lot, and I think you're talking about the parking lot in the back where you access behind the, okay. So I will speak with our Public Works Department and see if we can get a paved, I thought there were some paved walkways to the seating area. No? Okay. So I will work with Carlos to make sure we address that, and also to the restroom facility. I know we did it at Fletcher Field. We put in a paved walkway all the way around at Fletcher Field, which is nice. And that gets to all the seating as well. But we'll look into the Pisani Field one. The second part of that was that Delcart. You said that that hill is really, that hill is more than a 1 in 12 ratio to go down there. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that there's a handicap accessible parking spot at the bottom of the hill. And I believe there was a sign there at one point where you could drive down that hill and park down there. And that was the idea that we would, because I know that hill is pretty steep and you wouldn't be able to get back up, but I thought we had put in a little spot there where you could drive the car down and park. But if not, I will again talk to Carlos to see if we might be able to put in a spot down there, so that you can park. Because again, I don't think we'd be able to get that 1 to 12 ratio. Would be really tough to navigate down that hill. But all excellent points. And I would just say that when you do fill out your survey, just make sure that you mention all these things, because we really take those seriously when we look at those surveys. So thank you.
Just a question going off that, Ryan and Gus. So Ryan, when you were going through the inventory, I know a lot of the, a lot of the properties are, part of the school district. Are those, when it comes to implementing changes or making improvements there, are those under like the schools, ownership, stewardship? Are they responsible for that? Is that you guys in DPW? How are those properties managed from the standpoint of if we need to?
So I'll try to answer
Our
that.
facility,
Go ahead.
yeah, Mike D'Angelo, our facilities director, is the one tasked with maintaining the playgrounds on school property.
Are you talking about anything new that goes in, Patrick, at all?
Yeah,
as well?
I guess just, from kind of a, the budget, right, and where's the money coming from and how are we implementing these, if we're making recommendations to address these, I understand that there's, the school budget and then, the town budget, and so just making that distinction.
As Ryan and I well know, it's something that if you put in a new facility, you have to absolutely make it handicapped accessible. So that's the rules, and you can't waver from that at all.
No, understood on that point, and I think, to what we were talking about, with the playgrounds specifically, but a lot of the other facilities that Ally was mentioning, is, the existing facilities that from a legal compliance standpoint, don't need to be brought up to code necessarily, but, if there are any that should be either brought up to current code or even beyond what current code requires.
That's a good point. The way I look at it is you touch it, you own it. So if you start to do work at a facility, sometimes it's impossible to do it with the topography. It's just not going to work. And there are variances that the board gives out as well, but if something is refigured or remodeled or a new facility goes in, it very well should and has to be accessible. And I know I keep bringing up the challenges with the topography,
Right, right.
but that's not a great excuse.
Well, I
you
mean,
know, but we do our best.
we can be innovative.
Yeah.
Bree, any other questions or comments? We have a couple minutes left before we switch gears to,
Sure. Just a few administrative type comments, and then I'd like to just follow up with some funding questions. All of the responses, Ally's responses, for example, are on that Google form, and I've been putting that in your drive, so you have those verbatim to date. All comments submitted on the Google form and in the survey, which will be coming out second week of February, will be included in the open space plan as they are written at the back. So there is full transparency there between the town, residents to the town to the state. The Delicart handicap sign, that is something that can be fixed like that. So I will coordinate with Tony Brunetta, he's our grounds superintendent, to get that put up. Fixing the substrate on that slope, that'll take some time, Ally, but that is something that I can definitely look into, which brings me back to funding. It's not so much for ball fields. Ryan is a content expert for that. But for conservation type areas, there's mass trail grants, which help bolster accessibility. There's also the forest stewardship plan, for example, so included in that, there's opportunity for funding to help with the trails, trail maintenance, making those more accessible. So that also piggybacks off of the existing facilities, and how can we ensure that they are staying up to speed with the new facilities we're building. And that's all I have.
any other questions?
Do we have time?
Yeah, please. Let's give it another 5 minutes maybe, and then we can.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan, for the excellent presentation. Just a few thoughts. One, restrooms. Yeah, appreciate you bringing up restrooms, and I agree with Ali on the sculpture park. Delcart's another one that might benefit from a restroom. And speaking of Delcart, have you considered the need for maybe more parking? You know, as the town has grown, Delcart, and are there other places where more parking might be needed?
Yeah, I mean, we knew when we built Delcart that parking was gonna be an issue. It's just, there's not a lot of space where, you know, you get into wetlands as you get a little further over from, on the other side of the parking lot. So I know a lot of people, and it's not ideal, but a lot of people use the street, you know, across the street they park, and I've seen them, you know, using the crosswalk to use the playground. So it's just it's not a lot of space down there to accommodate more parking. I think that's the issue that we have at Delcart.
I understand, thanks.
Mark, any questions?
Yeah, Ryan, quick question. One point you're going through the inventory, I think you mentioned the community preservation funds. Is that something that you have access to for these improvements, or how does that figure into all this?
Yeah, it does. The Community Preservation Fund is, recreation is just one of three that can utilize those funds. So we can certainly tap into that to make some of these improvements.
Thanks.
One last question.
Sure.
So Davis Thayer may be repurposed, and I was wondering, do you depend on those facilities as part of the inventory? Or is it okay to lose them?
We do depend on that. Our baseball program uses it, and it's actually where we do our Challenger program for kids with mobility issues. They play there on Sunday afternoons, and they're kind of coached by some of the Franklin youth baseball players. So we do use it. I know a lot of families use the playgrounds and the surrounding grass space as well. I do see people over there shooting baskets from time to time. So yes, it is something that we use.
Thanks. Yeah, I know they just are standing up a committee to talk about reuse, so something for us to consider.
I'd just like, Ally wrote into the chat, and then we can wrap up, but is the SNET trail part of this? The stone dust is not accessible. The SNET trail is a state-owned property, so it is and it isn't. The open space plan is for town-owned properties or town tax properties like Chapter 61, or less taxes anyways. But I will say Ally DCR will be coming to a few of our focus group meetings. I can let you know when they are coming, and that's a great question to raise to them. Also, her second question is Delcart, if there is or can be a handicap spot at the bottom of the hill, is it accessible to get from the car to the trail? That is something that will take a little bit more time in management and trying to suss out different types of substrate, especially since we are in environmental jurisdictions, change of grade, fill, all sorts of things. But I can get the sign up. We can do it agile style, get the sign up, and then we can work from there.
Kobe, do you want to have the last word before we adjourn this portion?
Sure, thank you. Apologies for catching this late. I just wanted to make sure I spoke a few things onto the record, most of which is already being done. So I had three things. One was what Ally highlighted. Any opportunities for certain parks to have full connectivity of paved pathways really help our wheelchair users around town. Second was I'm in a household where the number one thing I hear about around town is the lighting on King Street and when it's going to get done. I know it's going to get done, but I might as well take this time to further the urgency on that front. And the third, just in case it hasn't been spoken, I just huge thank you and appreciation for Ryan being responsive in putting a cricket pitch together. As we are looking further along to more fields, so they're currently behind Kennedy. It's a very tight space for cricket, and there's pretty high and a growing demand for cricket in town. And so as we look to at opportunities for different parcels of land, opportunities for cricket would be fantastic.
Great. Thanks, Kobe.
That's it.
Thank you.
And just want to thank Gus and Ryan for being here tonight, and for everyone who is called in or Zoomed in or been here. I think this was a great discussion. Just want to preview for the open space plan. Our next session will be on February 9th, and the topic is school recreation facilities and parks. So we'll be digging a little bit more into this area, and then looking ahead to May, on May 18th, we have another session scheduled specifically on open space accessibility, trails, bike paths, and town connectivity. So definitely something that's top of mind, and that I think as we're hearing from folks on the plan, that we want to make this, I think is a very important part of how we're going to be looking at the various properties. And so thank you again. I think we're going to just adjourn for a couple of minutes before we start our kind of regular